In this video, I'm trying to cover a few aspects of my present understanding of developmental coaching. You could, of course, argue that all kinds of interactions, not even coaching, all kinds of other things, hopefully contribute to some kind of development. And as we all know, the moment we come out of our comfort zone and come into this so-called growth zone, some kind of growth starts. And the closer we come to the border, to the panic zone, some people say, the more there is a kind of a shift possible. So when we look back to our own life, when it was most painful, very often this were the most interesting, the strongest, most dynamic impulses for development and growth. But this would be life in general. So then we have some kind of normal coaching, and it could be that a person comes to you as a coach to solve some kind of problem, and you don't really have the role or the goal to support development in special, but just to support solving one kind of problem. My understanding is at least that all kinds of coaching should or could be developmental. So not just helping to get a fish, but really to learn to fish oneself. And so that the next time the person comes to a similar situation, she can solve similar difficulties him herself, maybe because he or she has learned a special technique or approach, but maybe because the person has gained a different perspective, can look at a situation from a different angle. Developmental coaching in special asks the questions, where is the client, the coachee, where is he or she now, cognitively, socio-emotionally, and from his or her worldview. And the moment we ask, where is he, she now, of course, we hopefully ask, where am I now? And one of the strongest ethical principles, I would think, is I can only support coachees if I'm developmentally more mature, not just a little bit, but a strong bit, I would say, than the other person. So if I'm cognitively or socio-emotionally lower than the other person, even if I think I'm an expert because I've read a lot of books and I've done a lot of training, even so, we will see in the actual coaching that my limits become the limits of the coaching. So my question is, how can we make sure that we are really mature enough for the coachee? And how can we kind of hand on the person and his or her needs to another more mature coach if necessary? So this means I myself should be assessed regularly, I think, and also that I develop a good sense of maturity for coachees. So maybe people will follow my advice and get some kind of assessment before they start a coaching. So this would be a very ideal situation, but very often we'll have a different situation. People are not really interested in a lot of assessment and scoring, and maybe they don't even would use the term developmental coaching, and maybe I wouldn't even use it because it only makes the situation too complex or too complicated at least. But still, it's helpful to have a good notion of where is the other person, where am I mature enough? And yes, it could be that I'm so far away in my maturity. So let's assume I'm, I don't know, somewhere between S4 and S5, which means I'm have a self-authoring perspective. I'm already transforming to a self-transforming perspective. So my identity becomes very fluid, etc. And then I have a coachee where he or she is not yet, I don't know, S3, which would be not yet at a socialized mind. So this is quite a span, quite a distance between these two positions. And it could be that I kind of lack the empathy for the struggles and the perspectives of this person, and that I intuitively would kind of support or offer questions and interventions which are too mature, too high, too complex for the other person. So it could be that for this coachee, another person who is not so far away from him or her would be a better candidate as a coach. So it's not enough to be more mature. The question is also, can we empathize with a person, and can we find the right approach in my talking, in my speaking, in my relationship, in my behavior, in my language, and all kinds of stuff, how I'm appearing with the other person. So am I a good fit for the other person, for his, her development? One last aspect I would like to introduce here. Maybe you want to look up the concept of the zone of proximal development. That's a very nice concept that I learned from Leo Vygotsky. He was a Russian developmental psychologist, and he's talking about the zone of proximal development. And if you see yourself or the other person surrounded with circles like an onion, with onion layers, and there is an inner area with competencies, perspectives that you already have, and you don't need another person to support you to handle these perspectives. And then let's just imagine you have another layer around this, and these would be perspectives and skills, etc., that you do not have yet, but you could gain or acquire these perspectives yourself with some kind of, I don't know, books or online training, etc. And then there is a third layer. There are perspectives and approaches that you do not have yourself. You couldn't even acquire them yourself with books, etc. But you could acquire them with another person supporting you by coaching, therapy, etc. And outside is the big realm, the big sphere of perspectives that you do not have yet. And even with a wonderful coach, it's not yet accessible. It's beyond your reach. And of course, the more we grow, the content of these layers change and other things become closer. But the question Leo Vygotsky is asking, what's the zone of proximal development? What's the next step, or what are next steps that would be accessible for you or for the other person? And I think it needs not only intuition, but also some experience and a good eye and good listening skills, a good understanding of your own development and the other person's development, to get a better insight about which these next steps could be, but also which interventions would be too far away from the person, so it's maybe beyond his or her reach. Thank you very much.